As part of our assessment, we need to create a Choropleth map under exam conditions. So of course, practice is going to be extremely important for this, and knowing your geographical conventions. What are those elements that need to be there in order for a Choropleth map to be accurate? So our first practice is using exercise 6.3. And we are relating to questions 3 to 5. Now it's actually question 4 where it starts asking us to create our map, and then of course question 5 asks us to start analysing and interpreting it. So to create our map, we have provided for you a number of documents that you need. So the first one that you need is on the page a little bit further up, which is the textbook Excel document. So open that. While that's opening in the background, we're going to go down a little bit further, and we have a document which is called Choropleth Mapping Conventions. We'll leave that for a moment. You can refer to that later. The other thing we want to do is open the base map. Now this map is a good quality map. It allows us to fill in the countries very easily using Paint. Before we do anything, I would ask you to save it just onto your desktop. Just makes it easier to access. If you've got an aversion to doing that, then don't do it. Put it into a file. So I'm going to drop it onto my desktop. It's my base map. And I can close that up then. Now, I know that I'm going to be using Paint. So if I go down to the Windows icon, type in Paint, as long as I can spell it. Yes, there's my desktop app. And I open Paint. I can now go File, Open, go into my desktop, and where I find it, open up my base map. So it actually gives me a really nice map, nice clear map. Now I can tap that onto the side and it will open up half a page. It means that I can open up my Excel document on the right hand side. Now, because we're nice, we've actually provided you with the table to which question 4 refers, already provided in this Excel document for you. We have also, as you can see here, identified what are the 5 different categories that we want you to break the information down into. We've given you the cutoffs and we've given you a descriptor for each of these as well. So we see something as it could be abundant or it could be very high. It could be common or it could be high. It could be frequent or it could be moderate. It could be occasional, it could be low, it could be rarely, it could be very low. Now, your descriptor is something that you need to choose, and it needs to be based on the data that you're presenting. So you might remember from year 11 that this is actually our AC4 scale that we used for June vegetation. When we have a look at the data that we're actually presenting here, we are looking at the percentage of children under 5 with suspected pneumonia. Now, that first column doesn't seem particularly relevant to me. I actually think this second column of descriptors would be important, but I provided both of those with you to give you an idea that they don't have to be exactly the same, and sometimes it's not appropriate to use one set of descriptors as opposed to another. Now, something that will help you is that what I have done is I've identified those colours that I'm going to use for each of these sets of data. A Choropleth map always has the darkest colour as being the most dense or the highest, and the lightest colour as being the least dense or lightest. It also means that we are going to use colours within the one tone. So as you can see here, we've gone from yellows, oranges into reds. You don't have to use that colour scheme. If we're looking at disease, I think that colour scheme is appropriate. If you're looking at vegetation, as we did in the June profile, sometimes your colours would be green. If you're looking at something relating to rainfall, it might be a blue set of colours. Pick colours that you know are not only accessible in Excel, but are also standard colours in Word it makes it a lot easier, and also standard colours in paint. Okay, so our first thing is that I have then gone through and I have coloured each of the countries from their data according to which category they fit into. So obviously very high, there's only one. And as we go down further, we have some areas where there are more countries and some which are less. Our job now is to actually start mapping that. So the easy thing to do is to pick your tool, pick the bucket, and then you pick a colour. Now again, we're going to use standard colours. So we are going to pick the dark red colour, and I'm going to find Iraq. Now the best thing for you is to make sure that you have something open beside you. It could be an atlas or another page, so that you can actually identify where all of your countries are. It's handy at this point to be able to share it with a friend, to be able to identify them very quickly. Now, Iraq's pretty easy. We know that Iraq has been in the news a lot over the last, well, probably over the last decade or so. We know that we are looking in the Middle East. Okay, so we go to the Middle East. We can expand, I'm not going to draw on it. We can expand that a little bit, so make it easier to see. And we can see here's Iraq, and we just click on it and it colours it in. Now we're going to do that with all of our different countries, and yes, it will take a while, but what you need to do is you just keep it in the buckets, and then you're just going to change the colour. So we're now going to change it to a bright red. I'm going to go through, we're going to find Macedonia, Bosnia, Mongolia, Syria, Belarus, Thailand and Gambia, and we're going to colour all those in. Now again, nice easy way to do it, just go through and click on the country. There's Mongolia done. Again, select your colour, go to orange. Okay, I'm going to find a country in there. I'm then going to colour it, and I could do that until all of my countries that are listed here are coloured. So let's assume that's been done, and what we're now going to do is we're going to create our map, our completed map. So pretending this is all coloured in, we then can file, save it as. Again, I'm going to put it on my desktop, but I'm going to call it final this time. Yes, I do. You may find it easier to save it as a JPEG, so you can do that too. All right, so again, we now need to present our information very carefully, and the first thing that we need to do is to open a Word document. Now again, like we did with the graph, you could present it in portrait mode or landscape mode. For this, I've decided I'm going to go landscape, and I am going to insert my picture. It's on my desktop and it's my final map. Now, because it's on a landscape page, I can make it extend to the borders. And of course, the first thing we need to do is make sure it's got a border. The easiest way to do that is to make it black at the top. Now, while we're here, because it's a map, we need to follow bolts: border, orientation, legend, title, source, and scale. And all of those elements must be there. That's where, for our legend, our Excel document over here, where we've basically created a legend, becomes very, very handy. So the first thing you need to do is that you're going to insert an orientation. So we've done our border, we go to shapes, so insert shapes, choose our line arrow, and remember, if you click on shift as you draw it, shift, it should keep it at 90-degree angle. Please make it black so that we can actually see it. And please don't make it enormous like I just have, because that's really silly. Okay, so we make it straight, which this isn't cooperating with me at the moment. I'm going to delete it and start again. So insert, shape, arrow. There it is. Make it black. And I can use my arrow keys just to push it down a little bit. Now the other thing, remember our orientation needs to be in clear space, usually in the top right hand corner. It should not touch the borders. Our arrow needs to not be ostentatious, but we now need to put an N or north point in. Now the easiest thing to do to make sure that we don't muck around with the insertion of tables is to click on our map, go to the top right hand side and have it in front of it, have it behind everything. So it sits behind all of our overlays. So we're now going to introduce a text box. It's taking longer than normal. All that we want to do is make an N. A normal N, it doesn't have to be enormous, it doesn't have to be ostentatious, and we actually really don't want it like that. Now that's pretty ugly. We do not want our shape to have any fill, and we do not want it to have any outline. So it means that our N's sitting there nicely above the north arrow. I actually, because I'm a bit OCD, I'd bring it down a little bit to see that it is connected to the arrow. Your N never goes below the arrow because that's where south is. Okay, so it's pointing towards where north is. So we have our border, we have our orientation. We now need to introduce a legend. Now, there are a couple of things that you could do. You could, I'm going to get rid of this column because I don't want it. I could copy and paste this and see if it will copy and paste into here as a table. Look at that, it does. I'm going to find some clear space for it. So it doesn't fit in very well at the moment. I'm actually going to reduce my font size. And that will make it easier for me to fit in. The other thing I'm going to do is because I've dropped and dragged it from Excel, it still allows me some functionality to move things. So as you can just see, sorry, I'll do that again. To make this a square box, which is what it should be, I get to a point where my cursor has 2 arrows and 2 lines, and I click and drag it across to make it a square. All of those squares should be from darkest to lightest, and they should be exactly the same size each in height and width. So it's an Excel document, it does that automatically for us. We've got this next column which sort of is sitting on its own. So again, we move along till we see our cursor. Very carefully, double click and drag it over. We do not want any of this to create 2 lines. And now that we've got something that's nice and neat, we can actually position it so that it doesn't interfere with any of the information. Now, if you're having issues with it, you can right click on it, you can play with the table properties, and you can change the width of it and its positioning. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that. Now, the only thing that's missing for this legend is a heading. So again, I'm going to insert a text box and I'm going to provide a heading for it. Now, at the moment, I have to double check what it is. So it's a percentage of children under 5 with pneumonia who received antibiotics. Okay, so in Word, my legend or key is the percentage of pneumatic or students with pneumonia, pneumonic children receiving, antibiotics. Okay, that takes up a heap of space. We don't need it to. What we can do again is we can reduce our font size so that it matches the information below it. We also want to, while we're on there, we want to have no shape fill and we have no outline. Again, I want it to fit nice and neatly without impacting on any of the information that's